Hi, I'm Mark, 59, and I burst out laughing at my wife's funeral. Not a tasteful chuckle full body, air sawing, wrong as a siren laughter that ricocheted off velvet drapes. 3 nights earlier at 3 a.m., I'd felt Isabel's hand go cold in mine. 38 years, lights out? The doctor had shooed me from her last procedure with a protocol that sounded like a fire drill no one explained. Since then, the world tasted like cardboard and old pennies. Her coffee mug still sat on our counter, half full, lipstick stamped like a bruise I couldn't scrub away. Closed casket, the funeral director kept saying, like a spell that fixed anything messy. I stood at the podium with the polite eulogy my sister helped write, Isabel Elizabeth Delaney, devoted, gracious, blah blah blah, and it felt like I was narrating the weather on a planet I didn't live on. Isabel hated solemn. She wore rainbow wigs to chemo and taught nurses the choreography to single ladies. And then a bolt of memory hit, the pact we made 5 years ago after too much wine and someone else's depressing memorial. Whoever dies first rickrolls the crowd. Whole song. Pinky swear. So I did what a good husband does, I kept my stupid promise. One tap, and those opening drums exploded from my phone. Half the room gasped, the other half tried to decide whether I'd gone feral. I started singing badly. Never gonna give you up. And somewhere between verse and chorus, sorrow cracked. Her college roommate snort laughed into a tissue. Even her father's jaw loosened. By the bridge, people were crying and belting along, this deranged choir in black, and for one shameless minute it felt like Isabel was winning again. Applause at a funeral is a strange, holy noise. It died, and that's when I saw it. Her mouth. A tiny curve. The smallest swallow of a smile, like she was fighting a laugh from behind the satin. I felt my heart fall through the floorboards. I blinked hard. Her chest did it, lift? Isabel? I whispered, stupidly, like she could answer me from inside a box. I took a step off the dais. The funeral director Matthias, polished voice, funeral home cologne materialized and touched my elbow with the gentleness of a bouncer. Mr. Delaney, let's take a breath. He murmured, eyes flicking not to me but to the casket, then to his phone, like he was waiting on a weather report only he could read. She moved. I said, too loud? Heads turned. Isabel's mother started sobbing in a new animal register. 2 employees in matching charcoal suits slid out of a side door and formed a human bookend between me and my wife. I tried to pivot around them. They shifted with me, apologetic smiles stapled to their faces. She's breathing, I said. I could hear the panic in my voice, a fizzing kettle. Open it. Grief can do this, Matthias said softly. The mind protects itself. Visual misperceptions are. Open it. My sister, gentle, reliable, maddening, appeared at my shoulder, fingers vice tight. Mark, let's step out, she whispered, eyes glossy, not quite meeting mine. Not disbelief. Avoidance. The difference stabbed me. The room unraveled. Murmurs, the squeak of pews, the salted sound of people deciding whether to flee or film. Matthias kept his calm smile, the kind you practice in a mirror. My office, he said, already shepherding, already narrating, stages of grief, trauma response, how the brain can conjure motion where none exists. He even apologized for the inconvenience, like I'd complained about lukewarm canapes. I craned around him for one last look. From this angle I couldn't see her face, just the smooth curve of the lid, obscene and pretty. My knees went weird. I let them push me through a side door into a corridor that smelled like furniture polish and lemon cleaner and faint, clinical something. Matthias's office was too neat. Tasteful certificates. A plant that had never struggled. He offered me water. I stared at his hands, they didn't shake. Mine did. He started the script again, denial, exhaustion, hallucinations, each word landing like a padded mallet. No, I said, and my voice came back to me, low and finally steady. I saw her mouth. I saw her chest. You were watching the casket like it might misbehave. Why? Silence. A blink too slow. My sister cleared her throat. Mark, please. Her voice was a soft bandage. Her eyes were a locked door. And that's when the whole day tilted. Not from grief I recognized. This was something else. The wrongness had weight. The closed casket only. The missing phone from her belongings, the one she guarded like a limb. The doctor who banished me at 2:30 a.m. with protocol. Matthias checking his phone like a lifeguard watching a riptide. I stood so fast the chair hiccuped backward. I'm going to see my wife, I said. Matthias rose too, all velvet and no teeth. Mr. Delaney, I can't permit, there are health regulations. Then call the health. I snapped, already at the door. The corridor beyond was empty, lights humming. Somewhere back in the chapel, people were gathering their coats and their gossip. I pressed my palm to the cool wall, just once, like it could steady me. 38 years. Rainbow wigs. Off-key humming. A promise to never, ever leave each other without one last ridiculous song. I took a breath that hurt and stepped toward the only thing that made sense, the truth, however ugly it was, pried open with my bare hands if I had to. The next 20 minutes were a blur of locked doors, silent corridors, and Matthias's voice trailing behind me like a bad perfume. Sir, please, we really must insist. I wasn't listening anymore. My mind was running a different reel entirely. Her smile. That impossible, microscopic curve. I'd kissed those lips goodnight for 38 years. You don't imagine a smile like that. Not through grief. Not through drugs. That was real. I knew it the way I knew my own name. The casket had been wheeled out by the time I shoved my way back into the chapel. Just gone. Vanished like a magician's prop. The altar looked naked without it, just flowers and confused whispers left behind. My sister caught up to me, breathless, pale. Mark, please stop, she begged. Where did they take her? I snapped. They're just preparing for cremation. She lied badly. Too fast, too practiced. My brain went cold. I never signed off on cremation. She blinked. I never signed anything after she died. Not one paper. Now she blinked slower. That's when I knew. My sister wasn't just complicit, she was scared. I turned and left the chapel, storming into the hallway where two of Matthias's funeral cronies were wheeling a tall, silver container down a side corridor. They stopped when they saw me, like deer who'd forgotten what to do when headlights appear. Where is she? I asked. They exchanged a glance. I said, where the hell is my wife? She's already in transfer. One of them said, calm and blank as a voicemail prompt. I stepped forward. They both stepped in sync to block me. And for a brief, blistering second, I considered violence. The way you do when everything feels rigged and the rules don't apply anymore. But I didn't need to punch anyone. I needed proof. So I left. Not in defeat, just strategy. If I couldn't stop them here, I'd find another crack in the story. A bigger one. I drove home on autopilot, barely noticing traffic. The moment I walked through the door, I grabbed the stack of Isabel's hospital records I'd been avoiding like poison. It had all seemed too painful. Too final. Now I realized it was a roadmap. Page after page of charts, prescriptions, doctor's notes. All standard. All routine. Until the last one. Consent for Terminal Comfort Protocol. Signed 2:47 a.m. I stared at the timestamp like it might rewrite itself. At 2:47 a.m. I was in the damn waiting room, playing Candy Crush like a zombie while a nurse told me gently, again and again, that no, I couldn't see her yet. Procedure in progress. They'd said it like a spell. Except I didn't sign that form. And the signature on it was neat. Too neat. Not my loops. Not my slant. Not even close. I called the hospital. I asked for Dr. Crawford, the physician listed on the final form. The one who supposedly treated Isabel in her last moments. The receptionist paused. Then said, Dr. Crawford isn't available at the moment. When will he be? I can't say, sir. Can I leave a message? I'll pass along your call. She hung up. I stared at the phone for a full minute, just absorbing the weight of that nothingness. Something was off. And it wasn't just grief talking. It wasn't just denial. It was a riddle wrapped in professionalism. Wrapped in silence. I opened my laptop and started searching. Matthias Fitzpatrick. Violet Fitzpatrick. End of life protocol. The articles came faster than I could read them. Co-authors. Siblings. A funeral director and a hospital administrator, united under the same family name. Research papers. Experimental studies. Euphemisms dressed as ethics. Phrases like simulated transitions and controlled family narratives. One paper titled, Managing Emotional Closure in High-Risk Oncology Trials, made my stomach turn. They were testing something. And it required families to believe the patient had died. Staging grief. Staging death. Staging everything. I sat back in my chair, breath short. And then I called my sister. She didn't answer. But 20 minutes later, her car pulled into my driveway. She wasn't alone. The nurse from the hospital, the one who'd ushered me gently into the waiting room and told me to be patient, stepped out beside her. Jacqueline. Her scrubs gone. Now dressed like someone coming to tell you bad news with a pleasant voice. We sat in the living room. I didn't offer drinks. I didn't sit. Jacqueline looked at me with that careful calm I'd come to hate. There's something you need to understand, she said. About your wife's final treatment. The way she said final made my hands curl into fists. Then she said the words that cracked everything open. It wasn't a funeral. Not exactly. My first instinct was to laugh. The same ugly, broken sound that had escaped me at the funeral. Not exactly? I repeated. You're going to have to unpack that one. Jacqueline folded her hands in her lap, rehearsed calm. 3 weeks before Isabel's passing, she was offered enrollment in an experimental oncology trial, one with a radical protocol. High risk. Unpublished. She agreed. My sister shifted in her seat, eyes shiny, lips pressed tight. She'd known. She'd known the whole time. Jacqueline continued. The treatment required a complete shutdown of immune and neural systems for phase 1. Essentially, induced death. Induced what? She had to die, Mr. Delaney. Temporarily. The body temperature drops, heartbeat halts, brain activity nearly flatlines. The illusion must be absolute to protect both the patient and the experiment. The illusion? I snapped. You staged her death? Legally, yes, Jacqueline said softly. Ethically, debated. My sister spoke then, her voice trembling. She didn't want you to know, Mark. She said if you knew, you'd stop her. I stared at her. You're damn right I would have stopped her. Jacqueline opened her bag and pulled out a folder thick with paper. She laid it on the table between us like a peace offering. I flipped it open. Consent forms, all signed in Isabel's handwriting. Loops, slant, everything exactly as I remembered from her grocery lists and birthday cards. My throat closed. She knew the rules, Jacqueline said. The family must believe the patient has died. No contact. No exceptions for 6 weeks. It's meant to prevent psychological interference that can derail recovery. I sank into a chair, because standing suddenly felt impossible. Why a closed casket? I asked. Preparation concealment, she said. We induce suspension quickly, before the body's systems can destabilize. Exposure risks contamination and awkward questions. My sister's voice was barely audible. She made me promise, Mark. She made me swear. The room spun. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to stop it. Where is she? I asked finally. Jacqueline hesitated. That's classified. Where? Her shoulders slumped. A research facility 2 hours north. She's stable. That word stable made something in me break open. I stood. Get out of my way. Jacqueline rose, blocking the door. You can't just walk in, Mr. Delaney. She's still under treatment. Any disruption could. Could what? Bring her back to life again? She winced. You don't understand. The process isn't finished. If you compromise it now, she could relapse. She could really die this time. My sister reached into her purse and slid a white envelope across the table. My name written on it, in Isabel's handwriting. The date in the corner, 3 weeks before her death. I tore it open. My love, it began. If you're reading this, I survived phase 1. I'm sorry for what I've done to you. I couldn't let you stop me. I needed this chance, even if it meant letting you think I was gone. I wanted to spare you from watching me fade. Please believe that everything I did was for us. The words blurred. My fingers left sweat marks on the paper. Jacqueline said quietly. She's asking to see you. But under strict conditions. I didn't answer. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. My sister tried to stop me, her voice cracking. Mark, please let me drive. You can't go alone. I didn't argue. The drive was a blur of headlights and anger, tears and half-swallowed curses. 2 hours north, she'd said. I was going to find Isabel. Dead or alive. And I didn't care what they called it anymore, grief, love, madness. It was all the same when the person you lost might still be breathing. The research facility didn't look like a hospital. It looked like a secret gray concrete, tall pines hiding its corners, no signs on the gate. Just a keypad, a camera, and a voice that said, "State your name and reason for entry." "My name's Mark Delaney. My wife is inside." "Isabel Delaney." A pause, faint keyboard clicks. Then, "One moment." The gate slid open. I drove through a narrow road that felt like a throat closing around me. My sister sat rigid in the passenger seat, both hands gripping her purse like it was armor. Either of us spoke. A woman was waiting at the main entrance, pressed white blouse, hospital badge that read Violet Fitzpatrick. I recognized the name instantly from the research papers I'd read. Matthias's sister. "Mr. Delaney," she said with the calm of someone who'd rehearsed this greeting. "I understand you've been informed of the situation." "Situation? You mean my wife's fake death?" Her smile didn't waver. "Your wife's treatment. Please come inside." The hallways were sterile and too quiet, carpet that swallowed footsteps, air that smelled faintly like ozone. I expected machines, alarms, medical chaos. Instead, everything hummed with the kind of quiet that makes your skin itch. Violet led us through a series of security doors, each one requiring a keycard and palm scan. "We run a contamination-controlled environment," she explained. "Phase 2 depends on absolute sterility." "Phase 2 of what?" I asked. She ignored the question. We stopped before a door with a window. Beyond it, a bright room lined with glass and stainless steel. In the center, a single hospital bed. She was there. Isabel. Alive. She was thinner, paler, her hair mostly gone, but she was breathing. Her chest rose and fell, a small miracle in motion. She turned her head toward the glass, and when our eyes met, everything inside me disintegrated. "Jesus, Isabel," I whispered. She smiled weakly and reached for the intercom phone beside her bed. I grabbed the receiver on my side. Her voice came through, cracked and soft but alive. "I'm sorry, Mark," she said. "I didn't want you to find out this way." I pressed my palm against the glass. She mirrored it. The barrier hummed with static between us. "You let me think you were dead," I said. "You made me stand there and bury you." "I know," she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I had to. They needed real grief to keep the protocol stable. If anyone suspected, I don't care about their damn protocol." She winced at my volume. Violet stepped closer. "Please lower your voice. Her vitals respond to emotional spikes." I turned on her. "You people staged a death. You drugged her, put her in a casket. What do you think I'm supposed to do? Send a thank you card?" Violet's eyes flicked to the monitors behind the glass. "If you want her to live, Mr. Delaney, you'll follow the rules." I looked back at Isabel, my wife, the woman who'd danced with me in bathrooms, who'd worn rainbow wigs to chemo. "Are they telling you the truth? Does this actually work?" She nodded barely. "The scans are changing. The cancer's shrinking. I can feel it." I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. "You're alive," I said finally. "I'm alive," she whispered. "For now." The room blurred again. Tears or disbelief, I couldn't tell. Violet's voice softened. "You'll have to leave soon. She needs rest." I refused to move. Isabel smiled through her tears. "Come back in 3 days," she said. "They'll let you visit again." Her hand stayed on the glass long after I hung up the phone. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to hope. But beneath it, something darker was taking root. Because if they could fake death this perfectly once, what else could they fake? I didn't sleep for the next 3 days. Not really. I closed my eyes and jolt awake to the image of Isabel lying in that sterile room, her hand pressed against mine through an inch of soundproof glass. Alive. Still here. Somewhere between a miracle and a nightmare. My sister stayed with me that first night. I let her. Not because I'd forgiven her, but because I didn't want to be alone with the noise in my head. She made tea we didn't drink. She kept looking at me like I might crack and start howling again. On the second night, I opened the envelope again. Isabel's letter. I read it for the 20th time, this time out loud to no one, hearing her voice in every loop and slant of her handwriting. "If this works, it'll be worth the grief I caused you. If it doesn't, I'm sorry I made you go through both losses." That line broke me. The idea she'd prepared for both outcomes, that either way she'd planned to shatter me. On day 3, I returned to the facility. This time alone. Security was tighter. I had to sign forms acknowledging contamination risk, immune vulnerability, psychological liability. One form actually said in bold, patient survival is not guaranteed. Do not make future plans based on treatment outcome. I initialed it with a shaking hand. Violet met me again. Her lab coat was pristine, her face unreadable. You'll be allowed into the room today. But with restrictions. They took me through a disinfection process that felt like something out of a sci-fi movie. Airlock chambers, scrubs, goggles, gloves, even some kind of mist that made my skin prickle. I wasn't allowed to bring my phone. Just me, sterilized head to toe, walking into the most important room of my life. She was sitting up in bed when I stepped in. No glass between us. Just air. Just silence. She looked at me, her eyes huge, dark circles under them, but bright. Alive bright. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Hey. I walked to her slowly, like she might vanish if I moved too fast. She opened her arms, and I folded into her, careful not to press too hard. Her body was thinner than I remembered, all angles and frailty, but she was warm. Breathing. Her heart beat against mine. I stayed there for a long time. She didn't let go. Not even when the nurse peeked in and tapped her watch. When I finally pulled back, she laughed a little. Your eyes look wild. I wiped mine and nodded. They feel wild. I wanted to tell you. She whispered. Every day. I begged them. But the rules were. Screw the rules. I said. They broke you to fix you. They broke me. She touched my face with one trembling hand. You would have talked me out of it. You're damn right I would have. I would have locked you in our house and thrown away the key. She smiled through tears. Exactly. We talked for 2 hours. About the procedure. About what it felt like to drift out and come back in pieces. About the dreams she had under sedation, mostly about me dancing badly in our kitchen wearing only socks. Apparently, even in near death, I'm an idiot. She told me her blood work was showing markers the doctors hadn't seen before. That she might be the first patient to survive this treatment. That there were still 4 more weeks in isolation before they could confirm anything. And then she said something I didn't expect. I want to tell everyone. I blinked. You mean about being alive? She nodded. Not just that. Everything. The trial. The fake death. The whole ridiculous truth. I want to control the story, not hide behind it. I stared at her. You realize people are going to lose their minds? I know, she said. But it's worse if they find out through whispers. Or gossip. Or a leak. I wanted to argue. To tell her we should wait until the treatment ended. Until it was certain. But this was Isabel, my wife, who wore wigs to chemo and laughed at funerals. Hiding wasn't in her blood. When I left that day, I stopped by the nurse's station and asked if there was anything I could bring her for the next visit. The nurse smiled. She's been asking about her rainbow wigs. I smiled too. I'll bring the whole damn box. Back in my car, I finally let myself cry for real. No panic. No confusion, just the overwhelming, aching release that comes when you realize the person you love didn't actually leave. She just hit pause on your entire life. And now, maybe, we were finally pressing play again. I showed up 3 days later with a duffel bag full of rainbow wigs and a knot in my stomach. Isabel lit up the second she saw them. The nurse decontaminated each one like it was a moon rock, then brought the pink one in first, the one she wore to her last chemo session. Isabel plopped it on her head, crooked and proud, and struck a runway pose from her bed. Isolation fashion show, she called it. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. And for the first time, it felt like us again. Each visit, a new wig. Blue with silver tips. Neon green. The hideous orange one she called. Traffic cone chic. We'd talk for hours through glass at first, then side by side. Her strength returned in inches. Doctors started saying, remission, out loud. One even smiled. I brought soup she barely touched, books she didn't read, just to feel useful. One night, she asked if we could throw a party, not a funeral redo. A resurrection. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. And I said yes. We called it the resurrection party. Isabel wore every wig layered on top of each other like some glittery rainbow crown. When the guests arrived, family, friends, everyone who had cried at her funeral, I hit play on Never Gonna Give You Up. The same opening drums. The same promise. People froze, then laughed, then cried all over again. Isabel stood in our living room, alive, unashamed, and told the whole truth. About the trial. The cost. The gamble. And what it gave back. Some people left. Most stayed. Her parents cried. my sister sobbed. And when it was over, Isabel took my hand, pulled me into the kitchen, and we danced in front of the old coffee mug I never washed. No music this time. Just humming. Off key. Idiots together again. Alive.